My first experience with the SUNY system was in August of 2017. I was required to attend my first year student orientation, and while we were all sitting in the dining hall on campus hearing speeches from various faculty members, we were all handed these challenge coins. Now I still have mine, and written on the words, "The College of Brockport." And when flipped, the other reads, "Better Community Pledge of 2017. My first semester went about as well as you would expect. I was homesick, nervous, and isolated. And my final grades reflected that. But then, the next semester, my grades showed the same thing. The semester after that, the same. And after, at the end of my fourth semester at SUNY Brockport, in early June of 2019, I received a letter in the mail. The words "Notice of Academic Dismissal" were the first thing that caught my eye. Fast forward 4 months to September of 2019, when I got into a car accident and lost my only mode of transportation to my job, which was an hour away, rendering me effectively both carless and homeless. During my brief stint bouncing from couch to couch, in my backpack, I carried a variety of gadgets, small bottles of shampoo and conditioner, body wash. But I also carried something else. The only thing I carried with me that was not inherently utilitarian was this challenge coin I received the rainy night of my first year of student orientation. I was reintroduced to the idea of going back to college through my mother. During the start of the pandemic, my mother and I had become a lot closer. And through a bout of illness and immense vulnerability, she told me that the only thing she had left on her bucket list was to watch one of her kids graduate from college. As soon as my waiting period was over, I reapplied for readmittance into SUNY Brockport. I feel as though it's important to share this story with you because I've never been a regularly active student on campus. In fact, I had always viewed campus life during my first couple years as a bit of a nuisance. I hated college, and I hated everything to do with college. Now, after being in the workforce for several years, after being homeless, after undergoing true poverty and eventually returning to college, I can appreciate the SUNY system in a whole new light. In my major, political science, there are 5 main categories within the field: American politics, comparative politics, international relations, political economy, and political philosophy. A professor of mine at SUNY Brockport, Dr. Andrea Rubery, who is also a winner of the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching, is set to retire in a few years. As a political science department's sole theory professor, that means that the normative branch of political science will be erased. Dr. Rubery's course list includes courses such as the history of Western political thought, American political thought, women in Western political thought, politics and literature, American political systems, and intro to political theory. Many of these classes that Dr. Rubery teaches are fundamentally important into the modern world, and especially within the tense political climate the country is facing now. In her Intro to Political Theory course, we learned that the main arbiters of the death of democracy tends to be democracy itself. Plato proclaimed in the Republic that democracies tend to backslide into authoritarianism. Ladies and gentlemen, a book written in 375 BC told us about the problems you're going to face today. It predicted what most of us could not. And so instead of proclaiming the values of these books and these philosophers and these courses, we cut funding for them. In American political thought, we discussed how fragile the American system is, how divided as a country we've always been. We learned that as a whole, us Americans have always been passionate. We've always been revolutionary. We learned, and then maybe that's just built into our inherent system, and that's okay. But somehow, that's not relevant in today's society, not worthy of keeping around. Well, clearly, as Dr. Rubery will not have a replacement after her retirement. And these courses are more likely than not to be removed from the list of courses offered after she retires. We've also recently had Dr. Mark Chadsey retire, who headed the pre-law program at Brockport, which thankfully has been substituted as the law and legal studies minor under Dr. Orr. However, for a bit of time, Dr. Chadsey conveyed a great worry in the future of potential law students and how, due to the lack of funding, they were not given a fair chance. Without being too political, this is especially harmful to minority groups who want to be a part of these programs or adjacent programs, but are forced into private universities, which many simply cannot afford, which is the reason they turn to SUNY schools to begin with. The lack of proper interdepartmental funding is surely not an issue to be ignored, but of course, it's not the only issue that SUNY Brockport's facing. At SUNY Brockport, we have the Student Accessibility Service, or SAS. The leading role of SAS is to support students with disabilities, including anxiety, depression, and ADHD. But they also have other programs and responsibilities. The Student Accessibility Service on campus also have a scheduled, an academic coaching program. This program sets students up with staff members to help organize scheduled assignments for their classes. In addition, SAS works with members of the Brockport community to provide a system in which they can report any access barriers they might find. In the past, this has included elevators or broken furniture. But the most popular SAS program that we have is the option for extra test time. This is one of the most popular uses of SAS, so fundamentally, it should be well developed. But for a program that as of November 15th has over 600 students, there are 11 seats available for test takers who are using a paper and pencil format. But with technology evolving as a standard, this innovation is met with only 8 desks with computers. It is surely hard to believe that an organization with a fair amount on its plate has owned various responsibilities and programs under its belt is left with a grand total of 3 employees. This is a direct failure of proper funding that can affect student retention and further dig the SUNY system deeper into the pit we are currently scrambling to leap out of. Mental health services are another field that requires constant and appropriate funding. During the semester, right before I was academically dismissed, I decided to utilize the campus's therapy office. Now, I was hardly in a good place. I had a myriad of personal problems, including alcohol abuse and relationship issues. And I waited over a month to get an appointment. Now, for me, that was hardly the end of the world, right? But with overall rates of suicide increasing, and a fair portion of that being college students, for some, it very well could be. These counselors at Brockport put in an outstanding amount of work. After my academic dismissal, my assigned counselor, Frank Knoll, called me after he saw I was no longer registered within the SUNY system, just simply to make sure I was okay. These little interactions could save a life. They are important to preventing unhealthy habits and are an important symbol within the community of compassion and kindness. Not only as an institution do we have to do better, but as a community we must do better. And the only way to do that is through establishing and devoting more money to our mental health services. Lastly, living conditions in the dormitories here on campus have been the subject of discussion in the recent months, as 2 subjects were hospitalized due to exposure to black mold. A similar issue occurred during 2019 at SUNY Westbury. SUNY Geneseo had to shut down their library after asbestos particles were found on countertops. This pattern is concerning. It's an indicator that there's clearly a need for renovations, and maintenance departments need the proper funding to accomplish this. At some point, the state must prioritize both the well-being of the students and the staff's ability to ensure that they are protected. Conditions in campus dorms have also been a significant complaint among students. This generally translates to a negative perception of the universities themselves. And again, will feed into this negative cycle where it's going to get significantly harder to convince alumni to donate to an institution they perceive does not care about them, when that's simply not the case. It's not a matter of lack of caring, it's a lack of funding. Most of the problems I listed are pulled from just what I and my fellow classmates have seen at SUNY Brockport alone. Unfortunately, I'm sure that there are more examples afloat that I'm currently ignorant to, and as someone who genuinely loves SUNY Brockport, this is heartbreaking. I will forever be grateful to both the faculty and staff at Brockport for everything they have done and all they regularly contribute. I've been very privileged to have mentors in my life like Dr. Orr, Dr. Rubery, Dr. French, and Dr. Schum, and have cultivated a great relationship with many of my fellow classmates around Brockport. Don't be mistaken. The SUNY system itself is one of miracles. It has allowed someone like me, who didn't realistically deserve a second chance, to reinvent myself and to advocate for something greater than myself. The fact that I was accepted into Albany State Assembly internship is proof that the system is working. Ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, we have an opportunity to invest in the future. We have an opportunity to invest in the students. And like I was taught on a cold, rainy night during my freshman orientation, we have an opportunity to build a better community. Now, all we need is the state to do its part.